All right, here we go. Hello. I turned 30 today, and I want to talk about it. This is take one, so literally, I'm gonna just ramble. No script, no notes, no real planning, no edits. I am just gonna give you my thoughts on turning 30. Where to begin? I certainly don't feel much different, but when I think about the number 30 and perhaps what I think it might represent or what other people maybe think it represents, I feel like I do have a bit of a reaction. And it's a little daunting. It's a little eye-opening in a sense. On one hand, and I felt this way for a while. I think I even felt this way in my early 20s and even late teens. On one hand, I've always felt this youthfulness, but I've also felt a little bit like an old soul. Not sure if that's the right way to put it, but that's the best way I can describe it. I remember when I was a senior in high school, or a junior, so 17 or 18, I started pondering the meaning of life because this idea was introduced in this mindfulness class that I had when I was in high school. I graduated from this pretty preppy high school. I spent the last 2 years at this private independent school. They had a mindfulness class, and part of that class also involved me volunteering at a hospice house. So I was around people who were chronically ill and dying. And for some reason, that question intrigued me. What is the meaning of life? Perhaps that was because in some ways I was a little bit lost, and I just really wasn't able to articulate that. Turning 30 represents, for me, this idea that I can't regress. Now, I probably want to unpack this a little bit because life ebbs and flows. Life is very up and down sometimes, and sometimes regression happens. Like we take a few steps forward and we take a few steps backwards. And perhaps that's not the right way to look at living. But I felt this a few different times, especially in my later 20s. Like I felt periods of growth, and during those periods of growth, I remember thinking, I can't go back to how I used to be. I'm not sure if I think this is a relatable thing for some people. When I look at being 30, I see myself more as an adult than I did when I was in my 20s. And that's kind of vague, I know. Because there are certain standards that people have when they throw around the word adult or adulthood. There's certain expectations or certain ideas that come to mind, right? For some people, it might look like stabilizing career-wise or committing in a romantic relationship and maybe having a family, less partying or late nights out or drinking or something like that, getting your health in order. But one thing is pretty certain that life is not linear. It's kind of cliche, right? But you hear a lot of people talk about that. And I think on some level we know this. All of us know this. But perhaps our thinking is geared more in a linear perspective. I remember when I graduated high school, or when I was in the process of graduating high school and looking at post-high school, the expectation for me was to go to college, get a 4-year degree, get a stable job, etc., etc., etc. And on the surface, this was something that I didn't really think too much about. I sort of brushed it off, and I had this mindset that things were just going to take care of themselves. And that's kind of what young and naive people do, I suppose. Not all, but some. And now that I'm 10 years removed from 20, I think back at my younger years and I'm pretty clear about where I did not make the best decision, or opportunities that I did not take advantage of, or mistakes I made. And if there's one thing that is true about life, it's that you definitely learn some lessons the hard way. Hopefully I'm making some sense. I'm quite tired. So, as I said, it is my birthday today, and it's almost 6 p.m. And it's been a long day, and lately my energy levels haven't been the highest. I feel like I've been a little bit flat over the last maybe a couple months, several weeks. But I woke up early today. I was up at 6-ish. I went swimming at the YMCA. Shot around on the basketball court a little bit by myself. Got some breakfast, got some gas in my car, and went to work. And I have some downtime at my mom's house right now. But for dinner and junk food and cake, I feel like in my 20s, especially my earlier 20s, there was more of a spark. Like, there was more fire in me. But I was not in a... I was floundering, for sure. And I think in some ways I'm not floundering as much anymore now. But I still feel like there are parts of me, or certain sentiments that I had in my earlier 20s and even before that, that still kind of stick with me. They're still stuck with me today. And one of those sentiments is this nagging feeling of out of placeness, which I gather is more common than it might seem, feeling out of place. When I was in my early 20s, I was in college, but I was in and out of school. And really what I wanted to do was, or my dream was, to become a touring artist, a touring singer-songwriter. Played gigs for a living, sold records, played festivals, recorded, etc., etc. And I had to let that dream go within the last few years, or I've had to let that dream go. Especially when I finally started to stabilize work-wise and work full-time and become more independent. I didn't work full-time until I was 27. So between 20 and 27, well, 18 and 27 essentially. So in and out of school for a lot of it. I was working part-time. I'd work, but I wasn't working full-time. And I was, like I said, in and out of school. And had a part-time job at a grocery store for a while. Had a brief part-time job as a research assistant near the end of my college tenure. And I suppose in some ways I didn't really feel like an adult until I started working full-time and becoming a little bit more independent financially. I'm really tired. My energy's flat, so sorry if it seems like I'm just not completely with it. It's because my energy's pretty low and I'm quite tired. But I wanted to also, maybe for myself, I don't know, for the world, I don't know what this is for, but I want to paint an actual genuine picture of where somebody is on their 30th birthday. This is a very precise timestamp because, like I said, there's no script here that I'm looking off. There are no notes. I'm just literally just rambling. And letting you guys see just how strange my brain is. So, for the bulk of my 20s, I was latched onto this dream of becoming a singer-songwriter. And in a lot of ways, that drove a lot of my decisions. And it's really strange looking at it now. How far your imagination can take you. Or how convincing just making up scenarios in your head, how strong of an effect that can have in terms of your self-image and in terms of decisions you make and opportunities you decide to take on or pass up. And I feel like for a lot of my 20s, I was very head in the clouds. And in some ways, I think you do have to be a little bit that way when you're pursuing something creative, because it's so hard to make a living, and it's so hard to quote unquote make it. So for a long time, like I said, I was floundering, and even with my pursuit of music, I never really made a consistent amount of money from it. So when people learn that I pursued music, it's always hard to even use the word pursued, because on paper or on the surface, it just looks like, well, Brian made a lot of music, but he didn't. That's really it. So I recorded a lot of music. I wrote a lot of music. I performed a lot. But if you were to look at the evidence, you would perhaps see that, well, that flopped. I never went on tour, never really made a dent in this music thing. Like, there never really found that momentum where people might say, oh, he's doing it. regardless of the fact that on the surface music wasn't really going anywhere, regardless of that, for the bulk of my 20s, that sort of defined me. I saw myself as a singer-songwriter, even though it was hard for me to let people into that world, to like let people see that side of me. I never fully embraced it. Because there was a part of me that knew, or maybe was embarrassed, that I felt like I had nothing to show for it. And that kind of leads me to the idea that you've probably heard a lot, that success is subjective. Like, you have to define what success means for yourself. And sometimes it gets confusing because you think that someone else's definition of success has to be yours. It's really sometimes hard to just form your own ideas because, in a lot of ways, all our ideas and thoughts are formed in tandem from other people's thoughts and ideas. For example, when people think of a successful musician, they think of maybe a pop star who's sold, millions and millions of records and sold millions and millions of tickets and are touring and are well known. And for me, I dreamed about having aspirations, or I dreamed about what it might be like to play in an arena or stadium. But I also knew in my head that didn't need to be the case for me to be able to be a professional musician. A lot of artists that I like aren't big musicians. They tour, but they play at clubs and theaters, smaller venues. You still have to sell a fair amount of tickets, or you still have to be pretty well known to be able to do this. So, who I thought I was and who I thought I was going to be for a lot of my 20s didn't really pan out. And kind of got really depressed about this as my 20s went on. Partially because I wasn't able to let this go and pivot. And which is what I really should have done, I think, earlier in my 20s. But it's not good to dwell on the past too much. And you learn, right? So, I want to circle back to the present. If you're still watching this video, kudos to you. I know this might not feel like the most structured narrative. I'm still searching in a lot of ways, even though on the surface I feel like I've grown a lot. I have a steady job. I'm in a supervisor role in my job. I don't make a ton of money, but I make enough for my current situation. I live in a house with a bunch of roommates, but my rent's cheap. So as I said, I did this music thing for a long time, and music is much lower on the priority list now. I'm not really engaged very much with it these days. Like, I still do it consistently. Like, I'll tinker around with the guitar or sing or try and record, but it doesn't carry that spark that it used to. But it's still simmering a little bit. Currently, I'm taking salsa dance lessons, which I started last month. Never really danced. Never took dance lessons before, so trying to stay engaged in life, trying to do something a little bit novel and difficult. So taking salsa lessons. I'm also taking swim lessons. I'm a terrible swimmer. I took swim lessons when I was a kid, but kind of had a fear of deep water, and so never really got the hang of it. So as I said earlier, I'm definitely a lot more stable in a lot of ways than I was for most of my 20s. But I do feel like in some ways that the spark, there's this spark that was missing. That was missing because I think partially because I don't really know what I'm going after now. I think, as I said, when I was younger, I was consumed by this idea of becoming a musician, and I was a little bit delusional because in some ways you have to be. But I also feel like when I was in my 20s, I think it feels like it's almost more okay to be that way. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's just a cultural thing where just being young, when you're young, it feels like you have more permission to just do whatever. For some reason in my head, I feel like now that I'm 30, like that I have to just be more practical. And I've never been a super practical person. But I've noticed as I've gotten older, like there just came a point where I had to be, because I knew that if I kept doing the same shit that I was doing, which was really going in circles, that I wouldn't end up somewhere good. And I had to open other doors. I've been rambling a lot, and if people watch this, I hope that there isn't too much negativity in the comments, because I'm well aware that I'm not the most coherent right now because I'm very tired. But that's just how it's been lately. Like I show up to work every day and try to do my job as well as I can. I work out, try to do something, a little bit of something every day. Try and eat well. Trying to do different activities, trying to be social, see friends regularly. But I will admit I'm a little flat these days. I feel a little understimulated. I guess I didn't also mention my love life, which there is none right now. But that is something that I would like to dabble in, because it's been a very long time. But that honestly is probably for another video. And honestly, I've probably already talked about this in a video. But I think that's all I'm going to say, because I'm just rambling at this point. But there you have it. This is a real-time snapshot of someone who just turned 30. It's pretty unfiltered. No edits, no script, no notes. Just talking out of the recesses of my noggin. I don't know if I'll make another video after this or when or whatever. But that's all I gotta say. And happy birthday to me, I guess. And if you also just turned 30, happy birthday to you. Let me know how your 20s went. And I hope you have a good evening. If you're in the East Coast, have a good day. Take care of yourself. Oh, man.